each and everyone over here. My name is Sheikh Afifa and I'll be hosting this amazing, prestigious Internet 2.0 conference right now. And it's been a very exciting day yesterday. Like, we met a lot of leaders and they spoke very well about, they were sharing amazing knowledges, which I think the audience, they were enjoying as well. So day 2, it's going to be really exciting. We'll be having a lot of interactive sessions, awards and recognition ceremony. So ladies and gentlemen, are you guys ready for the panel discussion? Tell me, come on, yes or no, shall we begin with the event? Yes. The Internet 2.0 conference. All of you, please put your hands together for yourself first. And I hope that all of you had grabbed your coffees, drinks, and we will be having really great panel discussions. There's going to be fireside chat as well. So right now, we'll begin with the first panel discussion, but before that, I request everyone to please be seated and please make sure that you've put your mobile phones on silent mode to avoid any kinds of distractions during the conference. Now the time has come that I will be calling our moderator for the panel discussion. The topic is examining the vulnerabilities and privacy risks associated with AI tools. Ladies and gentlemen, the moderator is K. Praveen Kumar Reddy. Please, all of you, give a big round of applause to K. Praveen Kumar Reddy. He is the Principal Product Manager of ServiceNow.
Good morning, Dubai. Good morning. It's amazing to see you all on the very early mornings. AI. That seems to be the new normal. But did you ever imagine what goes through behind the scenes, especially for our intellectual esteemed panelists who have to work it out through diverse backgrounds like tech, advocacy, legal, cybersecurity, you name it. We have everything encapsulated in terms of the experience that our esteemed panelists got. Let me take the pleasure to invite our panelists. We have first Vidhi Chand. She is someone who is passionate about responsible AI. She makes sure we have all the set of right properties in place to make sure our AI goes as we speak. Thank you very much, Vidhi. It's a pleasure to have you here. Followed up by, we have George. He is a tech entrepreneur with 20 years of experience, completely into cybersecurity and compliance, and he's dealt with industries like healthcare, banking, and hospitality. Thank you very much, George, for joining us. Now we have Kenneth. He's from London. He's a tech lawyer, and he has the experience of working on policies, coming up with responsible regulations as to how enterprises can actually go ahead and deal with AI in the future and as we speak today. Thank you very much, Kevin. All right, and the final panelist, Mr. Muhammad. He is from Jordan and he is a system architect and his core skills are into cloud computing. As we speak, we are all talking about applications on AI, but we will check with him and get the knowledge as to how systems and devices will play around. Thank you very much, Mohammed. It's a pleasure to have you. You can take. So I've categorized our panel discussion into three modes, basically. We will try to understand the landscape in the first place. Then we will talk about how we will tackle the pros and cons associated with AI, basically talking on issues like risks and so forth. And in the end, we will talk about future looking as to how we want to look forward as to how we approach the AI tech space. We'll get started with you, Vidhi. Someone who's really passionate into responsible AI. She's the one who talks to the machines and the algorithms to stay relevant and be within their boundaries. We wanted to understand there's so much of increased awareness about responsible AI. So, given that you recently launched your course on AI generative on LinkedIn Learning, we want to understand uh, what is your stand on this? How do you foresee this taking shape?
So, responsible AI, ethical AI, these are the words that we all hear a lot these days, and the awareness has increased as well as the requirement that is needed considering we are living in generative AI era. So, I'll quickly give an anecdote, a story of how my journey into ethics started. Several years ago, there was this, I heard this warning from Professor Stephen Hawking that AI, full AI is going to bring doomsday and all those things, and that got me worried. I was just thinking about it that ethical AI, I think I know AI and I am ethical to my standards. So in ethics plus AI, what is it that is still missing in this puzzle because of which we are talking about the need of having ethical AI? So I was wondering, and in coffee chat, I asked one of my colleagues that, this is the topic people are talking about. Is there something wrong we are missing? Then my colleague mentions, hey Vidhi, you are doing good, you are making innovations, you are writing codes, you are making algorithms. Why do you need to bother about this? And that was the seed point for me to realize that this exactly is the reason I need to talk and create more awareness, because if everybody on the planet is thinking that there is somebody out there who would look after the responsible side of AI, then believe me, nobody is gonna do that. So that's when I started my journey of talking about responsible AI and ethical AI. But the one point that I want to mention is that AI in itself is not unethical or cannot be irresponsible. So it's an algorithm. It's a technology. It's how we put it to use that becomes ethical and responsible. So we are going to say that it's a responsible use, development and deployment of AI. So that's the premise of ethical and responsible AI, which confuses a lot of people. When you tell me the words about there are best practices, guidelines, and policy, law, we are all aware about the AI Act, right, by EU. Then how do you bring everything together? And I think we are almost aware of the term as governance, corporate governance, data governance, and that's the premise of AI governance, the course that we are talking about. I authored a course on this. The whole concept is, what does governance make you do? It's exactly what we are discussing. It lets you address those risks and vulnerabilities, the other side that comes with AI. Talking about the risks, there are a lot. I believe no one person can foresee them all, but there are few that deeply bother me, and I'm going to mention that the core of AI is data. So how you access the data, how do you? It can even start from an ideation stage, right? If there was a discussion yesterday in this room that if I take input from almost all of you here and go and build the model, that model is going to not represent the entire population, right? So it's not representing the entire world on which AI is going to make the predictions. On top of that, how my data is being accessed, used, utilized, manipulated, right? Where it is going, where is it exchanging hands? If I don't know that, that bothers me. So that is data privacy, which is at peak of what can go wrong with AI. So I think these are the things, and you would say that within these existed quite a bit, right? These are the things that have been in existence. What exactly has changed since generative AI? Talk about copyright infringement. These models are trained on data from almost all of the internet. That creates issues. The one that bothers me a lot is deep fakes. There is a recent case that has come to news, which is an employee going into a call with the executives of the company who mandate the person to make a transaction to a certain account. And the crux here is, the person does that. He follows those orders and ends up making $25 million of transaction. The catch is that person comes out of the call and realizes that those people on the call were deep fakes. Executives being, and it's not just one executive, the other people that person is monitoring were deep fakes. And if that's the extent, you can understand and imagine that I don't know what is real. Whom am I talking to? What am I talking about? Can I even take action on top of this? I can't trust anything now these days. You won't believe the calls I receive, I take it with a pinch of salt that the other person might not be real on the other side of the call. So I think these are the things which give birth to having cyber secure systems by design. And we are in need of having solutions that can address these problems. So yeah, I think these are the top key concerns about AI tools that bother me.
That's amazing, Vidhi. Some of the points that really scares me is like manipulation, deep fakes. How do we contain them? So yeah, Judge, carrying on from what Vidhi said, imagine yourself being in those shoes and given your experience more into cybersecurity and compliance. I wanted to understand, like, do you wish to have AI tools which would reduce your burden because they do all the monotonous day-to-day job, or how do you see it?
Well, generally, AI comes and it's a playground for penetration testers, but also for hackers. Okay, so it's a double-sided blade. In this case, I see like AI also helping because it's the same way that it's going to help the attackers taking advantage of AI by using deepfakes in social engineering and stuff like that. At the same time, we have AI on the defense. Okay, it's like the red team and the blue team. So we have the blue team AI that comes here to protect us, that can understand and identify the points that, okay, this is an AI attack. Okay, so feel a bit more comfortable that there are already AI tools that are trying to defend us, our systems and everything. And mainly, as we said, data, because data is of the most importance. Because for me, as a penetration tester, I can go there, just do some data poisoning, you know, change a word, change something, and suddenly all your model is destroyed, and you don't know it. It's something like that. But this is why AI is also important in the defense, so it will help us also identify attacks like that. In terms of compliance, obviously, people that are around the EU know GDPR, stuff like that, so for the personal information of the individuals need to be protected. More and more solutions come that you're using AI models and machine learning that also provide flexibility and ease of use to the physical people to identify what's going on around that landscape. There are too many things that we can identify there, but generally keep in mind that we have the attackers, but we also use AI to defend ourselves.
That's fantastic insight, George. So basically what we are saying is like, yes, there are pros and cons associated with. It's all up to us as to how we go ahead and start using those AI tools. Thank you. Kenny, you come from a completely different background, basically talking about advocacy in death. So I wanted to understand, given the risk that we spoke of right now, what are the things that enterprises needs to keep in mind when they are trying to scale up? Basically, we are talking about components like intellectual property, then privacy, then how does the contractual obligations play out? Something from the legal standpoint as well.
First of all, good morning everyone, and thank you very much for your time. I think this is a key question, Praveen, and I think the interesting thing about this problem, or the problem of compliance within the tech sector generally as applied to AI, is the basic structures of what's going on is actually very similar to what's already happened. In that, if you look at the EU AI Act, in terms of the core provisions, there are things in terms of risking AI systems, there's things in terms of that are novel that haven't come before. But the actual nature of the compliance is very much, meat and potato stuff. Track what's going on, being able to explain it, being able to understand if there's a problem within the system to be able to, address it. I think, so we mentioned the EU kind of landscape, but I think there's some very interesting things in terms of the way the US, certain US regulators are talking about this. So the FTC recently, which is the Federal Trade Commission in the US, basically mentioned that a core part of its AI regulation strategy would be what's called algorithmic disgorgement, which basically means that if it feels that there's a part of the system that needs to be, for whatever reason, there's a bias in the system. There's a part of the system that's causing problems. You, as an organization, need to be able to pull that out, and obviously, large organizations want to keep functioning. So I think there's going to be a lot of details that come out in terms of the regulatory landscape that hasn't settled yet. But I think if you look in terms of the processes that a lot of organizations went through to, for example, become GDPR compliant, the structures of how that is put about is very similar. Now, the major difference is not the law. The major difference is the technology. If the promise of AI is upheld, it's going to become ubiquitous. It's going to be everywhere. And everyone in your organization is going to be playing with it. Now, specifically in relation to AI, I think you mentioned IP, you mentioned confidentiality, you mentioned a bunch of things. I think all of those processes will happen from a due diligence standpoint as you're onboarding new systems anyway. I think the interesting thing is there's only a couple of players in the market right now that you're probably going to be dealing with. And I think a core thing to bear in mind when you're dealing with them is what they're saying in their marketing reflected in the deals that you're striking with them. Because I think it's going to be interesting to see, but anecdotally from speaking to people within my industry, the answer is very much, it depends, and sometimes even just plain no. And I think because the market has not settled, you should also think about building model agnostic solutions. Can you switch if there's a problem with a certain provider, a certain algorithm, a certain solution? So yeah, I think it's a very exciting space to be in as a young lawyer, I have to say, because it's very dynamic in this way. But I think the challenges are 10x what they've been.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Some of the points that I can make note of is basically talking on how the regulatory landscape is going to change given GDPR enforcement. We've been hit with almost like $8 million cap for just being compliant around it. So that's a cost of leveraging system which we want to scale up. So as you said, it's a wonderful space to be operating in. We're looking forward to your journey as to how you take shape too. Well, Mohammed, given your vast experience into cloud computing, all that you're seeing, the risk, deepfake, the manipulations that can happen at the systems level, we wanted to understand from you, like, do we have the systems in place? How does the infra play out in the future?
Thank you. Of course, when we talk about AI, and especially with advanced enhancements lately in the AI applications, and what the infrastructure is required for it, it's quite a complex ecosystem. So it's not like you just need a powerful computers. It's like these computational resources need to be optimized, especially for AI tasks. For example, if you have like thousands of powerful computers, and each equipped with like really powerful hardware, for example, GPUs, which are very used for AI tasks, especially for parallel processing tasks that the AI use. It's very important that they be interconnected and how they talk to each other in the system. And take the cloud, for example, which the big providers like Google or Azure or Alibaba Cloud even, they will allow us to dynamically allocate more resources as needed for the workload of the AI, and that gives us flexibility of running massive computation powers on that, and this is really empowering the AI tools. In the same time, there's the aspect of data. There's massive data sets that need to be stored, accessed, and efficiently stored in the systems. Without that, you will not have that data models that the AI uses. And let's not forget the backbone of all this is the software, the actual orchestration tools that needs to talk with all these resources, the algorithm that needs to keep all that energy efficient in an efficient way. So it's like you need to conduct an orchestra. Every single piece needs to be tuned to achieve that.
That's amazing, Mohammed. So you're talking about bringing a synchronous activity between both the hardware and the software system so that they are relying on each other efficiently, and we will be able to scale up accordingly. And that's amazing. We'll change this flow of our thoughts. Vidhi, I wanted to start with you. Like, how do you want to tackle this risk and issues? Given your exposure and enthusiasm into responsible AI, what do you prefer? Like, self-regulating is something that we want to introduce into all of the enterprises that are in, or you want an external body like a legal landscape actually to come in and give you those regulations for you to follow?
Yeah. I think law of land dictates everything. That cannot be a secondary stance. But till the time that happens, like there are some precedences set, like with one of the most comprehensive legal framework already out there, it sets a North Star for us, which is definitely good. And even if I'm a pro-technologist, I would say that to err on the side of having a stricter norm is still good. There are notions that, are we really curbing innovation if we are being too strict in terms of regulating AI? Are we erring on the side of over-regulating it? But I think its initial days and benefit of doubt should always go to humanity, the impact it has on society, and innovation is not gonna dampen because of this. So I think definitely law of land, that's first, regulating is important. But what happens by the time that comes into action, right? Because I believe for EU AI Act, I think Ken can also put light that it takes a long legislative journey for an act to come into the picture. What would you do till then? Would you wait for the government authorities to come into the picture? And there is this important notion that they are not the experts in AI. The ones who are already experts in AI, the policymakers are not. The ones who are already experts are already finding it difficult to put it into action. That where do I draw the line? We always need to have the boundary, right? How much is enough? Where do I say that that's enough? That beyond this you can't cross the line. Already there are classification of risk. You can say that this is low impact and high impact and the kind of no-fly zone. You can't even think about making an AI on those lines, right? This is good. But would you really wait for anyone to give you action? That's when self-regulation comes into the picture, that every organization, every enterprise, definitely they have a corporate governance in place. Having those lens through which AI algorithms are made into each of the organization is important, because you are kind of already preparing yourself by the time your legal landscape evolves and those regulations are evolving as you speak. It becomes easy for you to catch pace with those. And self-regulation also has two nuances. One, do we really think it needs to be at org level? Every enterprise is responsible, because accountability is another aspect of being responsible. I think the way I look at it is very atomic level. Anyone and everyone who is touching an AI system development is responsible for it. It can start from the developer who is building that model. And it can be a role of an AI ethicist, like the role that I do. That ethics is a very abstract, theoretical, esoteric term. If I tell the developer, build an ethical system, they would say, but how? How can I convert ethics into code? Can you codify it? And if you can, tell me and I'll write the code. So this is such a big problem. From developer, you go and talk to the team. That gives you extra pair of eyes. And then from the technical team, you bring cross-functional teams, a product, apart from engineering, you have legal and compliance teams who come together. So having those additional pair of lenses is important to audit a solution. There is a concept of having an ethics board. They are having an independent judgment about how good is your model, how beneficial it is for the society at large, or the market in which you are placing, right? So I think if you start looking at self-regulation to the level that every person who is involved into this process is able to do the due diligence on their part, the stakes are already high, and we are able to manage that at a level where it's originated. There's a concept of shift left in the data world, which is like the kind of errors that can happen if you handle them to the left, which is the origin from where they are stemming up. The better it is, because the cost increases exponentially by the time it reaches to the downstream users. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Praveen, if I just comment on that. I think it's a very interesting comment that you made, which is, if you view regulation as a technology in and of itself to course correct societal harms, it's quite, it's like some software that was written, back in the 80s. It takes 2 to 3 years to launch something on a national scale. On an EU-wide scale, the GDPR was in development for years before it came into effect in 2018. And at a very basic level, as a tech lawyer, hand on heart, I can say I don't think we're going to regulate our way out of the problems that AI is going to throw up, especially not from a top-down approach. One thing I think is a very interesting development is the kind of organic, sector-specific or country-specific. In the US, actually, there's a couple of state-specific laws. I think Colorado has an insurance-led AI regulation that's hit the books. New York has something in relation to human resourcing and recruitment. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the legal market for AI risk develops organically, not from a top-down GDPR kind of approach, but like how, because I think the flip side is, to Vidi's point, I think if you ask most organizations, do you want to be self-regulated or be externally regulated, we kind of know what the answer is going to be. But what's the benefit of being externally regulated? It gives everyone certainty that you're playing by the same rules. And I think that's very important when it comes to theories of AI harm. Because usually with any other theory of harm, the market will course correct. You'll have a scandal and it will attach to a set of regulations that then gets everyone to fall in line. The problem with AI is the stakes are much, much higher. And if if some people are to believe, they could even be existential. So yeah.
That's wonderful. As we speak, I am able to recollect, right? Though EU GDPR principles was implemented in 2018, it took us like 18 months to basically bring our system to be compliant to that. So that's a lot of time that we have across the term, so that we can go ahead and play with our systems and then make things go bad.
And one thing, right, Praveen, I think rate of development is always going to be faster than the rate of regulation, right? So what you do in between, so you have to kind of balance it off. The ones who were able to do that are industry leaders who will have the customer trust or the user trust, which is going to be their brand loyalty in the long run. So I think that's going to be their differentiator.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Vidi is basically saying responsible AI is responsible you.
Yeah, you can say it like that.
That's fantastic. So to take it forward from there, Judge, everyone seems to be speaking about privacy versus systems being vulnerable. Would you shed some light on real-time examples or something that you've seen in your career which would help our audience and us to envisage where we are going actually?
Well, this is, there are too many examples right now that I can discuss. You know already that OpenAI, ChatGPT, when you start using it, it tells you that don't put your personal information there because everything is being stored and most people are searching about themselves or other people or whatever. So they're feeding the model themselves. So where's privacy there? Nowhere, because we're feeding it. On the same side, the model goes to other entities, other websites, and feeds itself with that data. And imagine that, have you ever Googled yourself, your name and your surname to check where are your personal details are? If you haven't, do it. It's very funny because every now and then I'm going and there and I'm deleting everything because there are too many data brokers around the world that collecting without consent our data, and you need especially to go to each browser that you're using per device in order to say that no, I don't want you to collect it. Browser per device. And imagine right now we have AI and it's collecting from everywhere. Privacy is a big issue right now because, as we said already, it hasn't been regulated in that extent, okay? Because each company checks like the self-regulation about their own stuff, but what is public, now AI comes and collects, just collects. It doesn't know that they can collect or not. That's why also New York Times are, putting a legal case against OpenAI, but because the system gets, all the data from New York Times to their model and providing answers, so we need more legislation there. But whatever, even the example that Vidi said about the deep fake, that it was like, I don't know, only recently that happened. This is also, break of privacy. Someone took the face of someone else and did something. And imagine that with all the fake news going around, how many things can go wrong, and already are going wrong. So this is where we need also to put in place, some mechanics that can protect us from that. AI will help us also because, as I said earlier, AI can also use the attacker, but can also be used from the defender. But always have in mind that the attackers are way ahead than the defense. Okay? So, and when I'm saying that AI is a playground for hackers and people that want to manipulate things in order for their effort and for the profit, don't take this slightly. Playground for a hacker is a very dangerous word. It's like a child going to a playground. They're playing all around. They find things to play. If they have games to play, they'll be using that for a long time. And right now they're doing that. They're making AI making their lives much, much easier. So we need to be prepared in terms of privacy. I don't know how this will going to be done like the following years, because for me it's huge. Imagine the data. We're talking about petabytes of data all around the world, and how we're gonna harden, defend, and generally protect them. It's something that probably our friend here can help us out. Please can do something.
I'll just add a point. I think whenever new technology comes, right, I've seen this is at the cost of generalization. Bad actors are faster than good actors. It's very difficult to bring a one good model out there, but you have many, many people who are, able to create havoc and then, try the best of technology and see the other side of it. So it's about, it's a tug of war actually, and then we are constantly on the offense.
Yeah, that's a wonderful analogy that you brought out, George. Like AI is like a big playground and people are playing around. It's interesting and equally scary. And I wanted to understand from you, Kenny, there's so much happening. We saw Cambridge Analytica episode, then now the nuances of economic landscape completely changing. It's just getting started. We're seeing what ChatGPT and BARD are up to. So I wanted to understand, like, what is the impact of these next-gen AI tools and how is it going to change the landscape?
So from regulatory landscape?
Well, absolutely, you want to stick to regulatory landscape. And before you answer that, I wanted to just put across to our audience, all that they are speaking is in their personal capacity, and please don't associate that to their enterprises as such. Just making sure we will get all the knowledge out of that.
So I've answered two kind of veins. So I think the impact of, so first of all, you mentioned Cambridge Analytica and kind of let's deal with things from a tech risk and a regulatory perspective. And just as an FYI to everyone, I'm giving a keynote to play from today. So I'm looking to delve into this in a bit more detail. So I'll just touch upon it briefly. But I think the very interesting thing about Cambridge Analytica is Cambridge Analytica made the GDPR, and the GDPR made Cambridge Analytica and founded the new norm. So I think Vidhi was talking about business as usual, business as normal and business norms as legal norms. I don't think you can legislate for things in a vacuum. I think usually what happens is the law tries to address a theory of harm, and then when you have a fact pattern that matches that, it allows courts, regulators, whoever to intervene, and it changes the way we view a certain risk. And for Cambridge Analytica, it was almost it is a very unique set of circumstances. So I think the story broke in March of 2018, and the EU GDPR actually entered into force in May of 2018. So both these together, I think, reshaped how we think about privacy risks. So the key question there is basically, are we going to have an AI Cambridge Analytica? I think we probably are, and I think it's probably going to give us a better understanding of kind of what the nature of AI risk is and what we're comfortable with as a society. I do think, however, that I think this is going to be more technological norms than legal. because I think the Cambridge Analytica, the nature of the bad faith use of data, the nature of the use case was, or the case study was seismic at its time. It was about using people's data without their consent in a manner they didn't consent to swing an election. So that is massive. But I think the use case and the scope of AI is going to be much bigger than that. So what an AI Cambridge Analytica to look like could be Cambridge Analytica and SolarWinds and a bunch of other kind of scandals that we've thought about in the past, all rolled into one. In terms of the wider impact on the market and society, that's whatever it is, the multi-trillion-dollar question. I think there's definitely going to be an upending of industries and jobs. I think the interesting thing for me, so just as an FYI to everyone, I work as a tech lawyer, but also the reason I'm on this stage, I think, is because I founded my own tech conference based out of the London School of Economics, and we look at technology trends from a societal impact. I think, and from some of the research that we've done in that regard, I think there's definitely going to be impact on jobs. That's a given. The really interesting thing for me is it's happening backwards to what a lot of experts thought it was going to be. We thought it was going to be blue collar jobs first, then white collar, and then creative jobs would be the first to go. And it's happened completely in verse. And I think it says something about the way we think about technology and technology trends. But I think for all the people in this room, I think the interesting thing about AI is it's basically an all-accessible superpower for anyone, and smaller players in an industry in theory, to flip over larger players in that industry. Now, there's a large kind of caveat to that, in that the people who are holding the chips in relation to that are big tech players. Now, is it going to be the case that this technology is so transformational that it upends those markets? I don't know, but I think there's every possibility that is the case. I think if you asked people, at any of the big tech companies who they thought the AI leader is, they'd all think it was themselves. But really, the kind of turnkey that flipped the whole thing was OpenAI, which had nothing to do with any of them. It definitely changed the conversation.
Kenny is being very modest here. We thought he would give us who the next big players would be. But thank you very much, Kenny, for adding the thoughts there. Because you touched upon how large enterprises are keeping their cards close to their chest and how they want to evolve, and no one is basically giving us the right direction as to how the technology trend would be next. What's going to be?
I think that's a big question.
Yeah. So given that, Mohammed, I wanted to understand today OpenAI is the Microsoft, the Google, so spending tons of money in having the infrastructural systems in place to be able to cater the needs of tomorrow. We've seen NVIDIA CEO recently saying it's not going to be AI all alone, but it's going to be sovereign AI, where he focuses more on having data centers exclusively for their own country. So for example, if we're talking today, Dubai or UAE at large should have their own data centers, so forth for the other institutions and other larger economies as such. So we wanted to understand from you, are all economies in the world ready for this change? Or how do you foresee as to how infrastructure side of things can add value?
Definitely. I mean, even for AI, all the major cloud providers, what distinguishes them is having more data regions in the world, and that's what advances one cloud provider than another, because not only for the data security, but also for network speed, because the more you're close to your customers and audiences, the more you have, less you have network latency. And also in the regulation part, where governments like UAE or US have their own Azure tenants or AWS tenants, because they need the data redundancy on specific regulations. AI is no different, but at the same time, it cannot have all the data in one place, in my opinion, because it depends. That's the powerful of AI, that it's processing massive data sets in the same time, and these data sets need a huge and robust storage solution. And I don't think you can have it in one data region.
It's all going to be a decentralized system that we will be going for Now let's switch gears, guys, and see how we want to shape our future. So with given that the risks and vulnerabilities that we have spoken about, we wanted to understand like how do we go about addressing those vulnerabilities? Is it a risk that we want to mitigate, or is it a risk we want to observe?
Definitely not absorb. The cost is too high. Okay, so I think the way we are going to handle this is, and first of all, I think when we are discussing about law of land as well, the previous topic that I brought up, one of the things that we all need to keep in mind, and I personally feel, is that AI is a global thing. It's transcending boundaries, right? So I am having a model developed here, but the predictions are going, I mean, it's not just contained within the particular country, right? And the impact is far and wide. It's not just dictated by the boundaries in which it is built, but where it is deployed, used, utilized, and impacting the people on which it's making predictions. If it is excluding a certain section of the society, then it's not just a particular law problem, right? So when we talk about handling issues of a technologies which is as sophisticated and as advanced and powerful as AI and generative AI, I just want to call out that the problems have increased with the scale of AI. The scale increased with Gen AI, and so is the problems that have come with it. Definitely there is a good side, but it's like two sides of the coin. So when we have such kind of issues, we need a global solution, but there are challenges in bringing a global solution because everyone wants to handle these problems at their own disposal. Think about all those non-profits coming together, sharing the guidelines, these are the best practices for you to do, then the governments and the organizations themselves also want to mitigate the risk, right? And how do you deal it at a level which is beyond your nation's boundaries? So there are challenges, multiple parties involved. How do you bring coherence? How do you bring everyone at the same page and convince them that this is what works for all? There is no thumb rule, there is no guidebook. Nobody gave us the playbook. We are being given the technology, but not the ways how to handle this. And we are just surfacing the things, we're handling the things as they're surfacing up, right? So that's one thing. One of the ways we can handle the risk is what I believe is educating, creating awareness, because the deepfake example that I shared, that person did not even know that this is happening, right? There is a report by Gartner which shows a survey result which tells that there are a percentage of people who don't even know this side of the technology that they need to be aware of. You can't be even scrutinizing the other side, so you don't know what these are the problems of unknown unknowns. Sensitizing the employees. I was recently devising a responsible AI policy for a company that if we want to communicate to our employees how best to use this technology, and they came up to me and I'm like, exactly this is what we need. We need to communicate it to our companies, to the people who are working on this technology. What data? Like we were seeing that we need to prompt the data, and if that has sense.
Put in place that all systems are doing the right thing at the right point.
There is an interesting concept of sandbox. So I'll make sure, so when I build models, I make sure that all the guardrails in place, because I put myself in the user's shoes and see that how would they be comfortable sharing the data. I think the origin of the problem starts with data accessibility and availability. Even if you have data available, are you allowed to access that data is the thing. Can you use that data? Does it have any PII information in it? I want to make sure none of this goes into building my model, right? So and it's very specific to how you as an industry expert handle these kind of scenarios. Test it where it breaks, and then what kind of repercussions it can do. Like I mentioned in the idea stage, for example, I think there was a case of giving credit loan. And imagine there is a bank who is making an algorithm, says that tell me the good risk and the bad risk. I think that's what we discussed yesterday as well. Good risk is what bank is ready to absorb, but not the bad risk. And if I want to profile a customer who comes next and tell that, I cannot give you the loan. And the person says, but why? And I don't have a reason for it. I can say, well, the machine says so. Your probability score is, it tells me that you are a very high risk person and you're going to take the loan and not turn up, right? This is not how my machines can react. Now, the problem the machine is giving probably the wrong prediction is, it has not seen the data of that person in the training time. The person who is in actual need of credit loan maybe does not even have a bank account or a digital footprint or a credit score that decides whether to give that person loan or not. If that is not there in the data, machine doesn't see it, does not give the right prediction, and the person who is in actual need of that gets suffered, becomes the victim of the situation, because that person doesn't have a say in the room. That's not even present. It's considered in the minorities, right? So that is what I just try to see as guardrails, is who is missing out in this picture? Whom am I missing out, right? Who should be part of this scenario, which is not being captured? Because again, machine is not going to be biased on its own. It's the data which is not letting machine see the other side. So these are the guardrails that I generally take care of.
Absolutely. So what Vinny is basically saying is like 80-20 Pareto rule might not be applicable for AI systems in the future. Carrying on from there, Judge, how do you foresee the future, especially for cybersecurity, risk, compliance? How does that come into picture for AI tools? And given risk, compliance, something is that people generally keep it in as non-functional requirements as such, which eventually have to become the new norm. How do you foresee that?
Well, the whole cybersecurity thing is going, right now it's going wild. So I'm not sure if I can predict something specific, but I see that the whole thing goes in a fast pace. So even in, as I told you, the attacker, the reteaming is going very fast, and the systems and the tools that are being applied right now and being developed are getting more and more precise. And as we said already, we're talking about the data that's in the back. So in order all this to work, we need data, we need clean data. So one question is like, who's going to clean the data? Do you think that the data that we have right now are clean? Are pure in the meaning that this is valid information that we have? This is a big question. So I don't think that a machine, AI, can identify what's good data or not. So we are the ones that we need to put our understanding and do that job for it. And at the same time, we need to get the data in such a way in order not to be biased. Imagine that, as Viti said about the bank loan, from my side, imagine that you're not getting any access to your systems because something in the data seems a bit biased, and you're like, okay, you won't get there. Why? So we have a lot of things in order to test and to prepare about the cybersecurity aspect. But generally, in terms of tools, for me it's like making myself like easier, because many of the things that I was checking out again and again and again, the threat hunting and the things that we do like in the blue team, in the defending part, it was like more difficult to do. Now it's getting much easier because everything is being identified much faster. Okay, there are ways in terms like not to block everybody, but let's say I'm spotted to be a malware, whatever. The system itself can isolate the threat. So this is something good for everybody. But generally, I'm getting back on the data. So I think this will be our main issue about the pureness of the data, hopefully, and it will have the correct data.
Fantastic. As you spoke about we being responsible to identify data as good or bad, I remember a use case that Netflix generally runs, what they call it as chaos engineering. What they do is they try to test the vulnerability in the systems, and in a given span of hour, irrespective of what time zones they are, they completely shut down their systems and try to bring them up in no matter of time. So that's kind of engineering excellence that we need to check the vulnerabilities within our system.
And Praveen, just on a lighter note, right, so I do give a lot of workshops and webinars, and a student asked me the question, right, apart from just being in the field of AI, you were asking about the future of cybersecurity, right, and this is the field to be in if anybody is looking for, because it's going to play a big role in how we get AI right. We can do AI, how to get it right, cybersecurity.
That's fantastic. I just want to open a question. How many of you feel like legal, cybersecurity, compliance, all are like obstacles in our path to actually go and create miracles from technology landscape? How many of you? Maybe just a quick raise of hands. Okay, I see only one, two. Maybe you're all reluctant to express your views here. But I generally feel like these are all too much of an add-ons to basically meet the customer requirement. But the cost of it is really high. So I want to put you on the spot, Kenny, and understand, like, does the legal landscape and the people who are working on the technology legal aspects, would they want to shoulder in and partner with technology leaders to bring the systems to do good, or are you still going to be that a role that you want to play and come in as an obstacle, or I wouldn't say an obstacle, but play the role of a regulator as such?
So you're saying you don't like lawyers, is basically what I'm getting from this, which I think is fair enough. I think the problem, Praveen, is not so. I think in implementing regulations and laws, there's definitely a split between trying to contain bad faith actors and imposing standards on everyone to deal with that sense of harm. And I'll be the first to say, like, I routinely deal with certain privacy issues. I'm so just, case in point, I'm a deal lawyer. I'm not necessarily a compliance person. So I'm actually most of the time trying to help people get the deal over the line rather than, not to say any of my compliance colleagues are doing the opposite, but I do in many instances see myself as a salesman alongside my sales colleagues, and my product is legal risk. So I'm going to try and sell the other side on my reasons for why the deal should proceed and the way it should proceed. But I think what you touch on is of fundamental importance in that in order to actualize the promise of AI, there is going to have to be better partnership between not just regulators, but I think old world institutions and new innovators. And I don't just think it's. I think an aspect of it is unpicking this idea of regulators being blockers to technologies and all of that. But I think maybe this is not the right forum for it, but I think the social contract between all of us in a society, the fabric of that has been shattered somewhat by the way we're dealing with technology and trying to react to it. I think, for example, you guys can probably Google Senate hearings between Mark Zuckerberg and the types of as someone in the regulatory space, I think the types of questions that he gets asked are just frustrating for me because then they show a fundamental lack, and I haven't seen the most recent ones. I'm talking about the old ones. Shows a fundamental lack of how the technology operates and what is actually going on. And I think it's a two-way street. So I think there is a need for regulators to better understand the technology and to facilitate it in a way that the good use cases get a bit more prevalent. But quite honestly, speaking as a tech lawyer within the tech space, I think we also, all of us in the technology sector, have to be honest that it's become a lot more widespread and a lot more a part of the fabric of society than we care to admit. Even private companies, a lot of the stuff. I think Mohammed, you mentioned the cloud industry and things like that. It's critical business infrastructure for a lot of us. So it's something that very much I think a good faith partnership across multiple lines will definitely lead towards.
That's very well played. So what Kenny is saying basically is like, if the social fabric of the society gets trouble, I will step in.
Not quite.
Thank you very much for that. Mohammed asks, the last point I wanted to understand from you, like, are we ready? From the cloud computing standpoint, what else needs to be done so that the amount of data that we are speaking is in place?
Of course, it's an emerging market and industry, and there's a lot of money spending on that. The latest reports say that OpenAI spends like $700K daily, and that's on the GPT-3 model, so it's much more on the GPT-4. But in my opinion, the future should be optimistic, but at the same time, we be cautious with it. And as Ken said, I think regulation and standards must take place like right now. It's not too late. Part of we here today is because of the massive success of the World Wide Web. And in my opinion, one of the main reasons for that is that these guys started the W3C consortium very early stage, and that's why it helped the companies talk one language in developing all these websites and tools on the internet. And the AI should be the same, but at the same time, I don't think it should be like in the hands of one or two giant companies. It should be a cooperative act between government, countries, and giant companies, because the money factor will play very well, and that will shape us, will affect us on how we're using the AI.
Absolutely, Mohammed. So for being more responsible, what Mohammed is saying is we want everyone to be part of this, so that we will have everyone say in it, so that we will be able to adapt very specifically to the art that we want. Okay, so that's our time, friends. Thank you very much, panelists. You've been very cordial and you've been very patient to take all our questions. Maybe we'll have a few questions from the audience.
This is good.
Yeah.
Like, that in the AI world, we are mostly talking about the access to data and having a lot of data, and then we are talking about cybersecurity. So I really find it difficult how both of these things will work together. Like, you want data, but you don't want data, right? So this, I don't know, like, there should be a way, like maybe we come up with something, like someone should regulate this, should regulate this thin line that yes, this you can access, this you cannot access. And secondly, about awareness among the organizations, like I receive email from my cybersecurity department, don't link this, don't click on this, don't use that, don't do this. Okay, like, okay, what should I do then, right? So yes, I mean, maybe like awareness is important, but maybe it should be done in a way that I, like a layman like me, can understand. Okay, yes, please don't scare me. Tell me what shall I do instead of don't do this, right? So that's another recommendation.
That's exactly what Vidhi was saying. It's all about we also being aware and also take the right steps in order to tackle the issues that we might encounter in the future.
First of all, thank you so much for this enlightening conversation. I'm from the health care world, so I'm a physician, and you can imagine how scary this is for us. It has been Google Doctor before, now we're talking about ChatGPT Doctor, and we have cases, because I come from Canada, we have cases from patients who have diagnosed themselves with cancer, and a lot faster than what our health system actually works. So if we're hearing experts saying that it's scary with the data and scary with awareness and scary, imagine for us who really are not in your field. And we have one big question, and it's about who does the data actually belong to? Is it the patient who should be authorizing, to give you this information? Is it on the regulator side? Is it on your side? Who is, it's just an uncomfortable state. So for us, it's just, and you're so right, like technology goes way faster than regulation. So we need to make decisions basically on the go.
Yeah, I can take the part about the healthcare, because I was working like more than 60 years in the healthcare industry. As I said earlier, detection is what it's with AI. It's much faster in everything. So in terms of healthcare, this is very crucial because it will help you a lot. The other thing that I have noticed and have pointed out in the past is that doctors and people in healthcare need to be more technology aware. Most doctors have no idea about the tools, no idea, even for a simple computer. So the world moves forward. So the doctors, the physicians, everybody should be more tech aware in order to understand what they're using. Because right now, you're being afraid of that. It's okay, for everybody it's new, but you need to understand, because especially in healthcare, AI is very useful. It will help you a lot in terms of timing, predictions, and stuff like that. In terms of the legal part, here's Kenny.
So it's not quite a legal comment, but I think you make a very interesting point in terms of who does the data belong to. And I think this is one area where I think we're going to see a stress testing of the previous thinking behind the GDPR as recast in the AI Act, and we're going to see whether it stands up or falls down. And the reason for that is the GDPR fundamentally is a rights-based regime. It doesn't talk about title to your data, it doesn't talk about ownership. And I think there's a specific reason for that, because if you talk about title to your data, you have economic rights to your data, and then what does that mean? So more it's put in a context of an individual has a right to have the data used in a certain way. If you're going to use the data in a certain way, you have to go through certain compliance hoops. Now the fundamental point here is consent is not the only basis on which you process data. you as a controller, or, basically if you're processing personal data, you can come to an independent conclusion that it's in a legitimate interest or a vital interest or something like that. There are other tests that you can go through. I mean, it's a roundabout way of saying it's almost, and so it's a roundabout way of saying who does the data belong to? Kind of no one. But in a more serious tone of voice, like this is something I'm genuinely concerned about. I think in terms of the risk cases for AI, I think healthcare is, alongside autonomous weapons and a bunch of other stuff. In terms of the day-to-day of people's lives, I think this is one that is fundamentally of concern to me. Both because, as George mentioned, the upside is massive. There's a lot of potential societal and private benefits to this. But these systems, AI systems operate on large amounts of data. So in order to make the system work, you kind of fundamentally have to process data en masse. I live in the UK. My dad is a doctor as well. He works in the NHS. What does this mean for public healthcare, and what is the trend that is going to go into? So I think it's a completely legitimate concern, both in terms of the immediate day-to-day use cases, but also like how if these systems are implemented en masse. I personally, I don't think we're ready for that yet, and as much as Praveen thinks I'm going to be the one to dictate the regulatory norms, it's probably going to be a case of the train's going to leave the station, and most of the time with a regulatory mandate, you have to unfortunately wait for something like a Cambridge Analytica before everyone sees the wood for the trees and actually wants to intervene. But yeah, really great point. Appreciate the question.
Last point that I want to make is that was a very right statement about how much awareness and being scared about it, and the reality I think lies somewhere in between. You don't want to really scare people away because there are good sides of it, and I think the very good way we can handle this is being very clear about what is AI generated versus what was not. If you are getting some recommendations, I think there is this discussion around saying that this is AI generated recommendation, so as a user and a consumer of that information, can I act on this information or not? That's one thing. And I think the deepfakes and all those images that we get to see, if there is a watermark content there, so you know that this is coming from AI versus a human. So being aware in the right manner, what am I dealing with? It's human generated, can I act on this information? Like there was a use case in healthcare, and I think healthcare, banking, judiciary, these are the sectors which are high risk and critical because they are going to impact the trajectory of the person who is involved here. I heard a case where there was an algorithm used in the healthcare sector. Again, coming to the point of the access to the data, right? The algorithm said, implicitly assumed that the people who do not have access to the high quality insurance are not eligible for high quality medical healthcare treatment. And definitely the minorities who did not have that did not get good quality treatment, and the ones who did. So it's about having a flavor of people of color. So did the people who were not getting access to that quality treatment were even aware that this is coming from an algorithm? They were not, right? I think they didn't even know that they're at the mercy of some algorithm, giving some prediction, some number, somebody sitting on top of that, just plainly passing it on to them, and they are at mercy of it. So I think that's very important. Wherever we are having AI deployed, having a call out is very important. This is what I call as, withholding information is also as bad as, right? So you're withholding information, you're not letting know what AI is doing. If you're making recommendations, giving predictions, and I am the consumer of that information, I need to know, is it good for me or not? Like same for the banking case, right? If you're telling me this is not a banker actually assessing my risk profile, but an algorithm, I need to know. So I think that's the kind of awareness we need to know, because that's going to take away the scary part of it.
Thank you very much. That's time for us all. You have another question? Maybe I would advise all our audience to connect with them. They are all very active on LinkedIn. They all go by their full names here. We can catch up after the discussion and we can get your questions clarified. So thank you very much. Appreciate all the inputs that you provided and all the knowledge, the wealth of knowledge that you brought to the table. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you very much to our dear panelists and our moderator for such an interesting panel discussion. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, next we have is the keynote, and the topic is the power of open source technology for enterprise. And we have our speaker, Gabe Karp, Managing Director of EMEA at 10UP. Ladies and gentlemen, please all of you give a big round of applause to Gabe Karp.